Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we're continuing our ongoing coverage of both the war between the Russian Federation, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and its Ukrainian proxy forces. Additionally, we're going to continue to cover what is happening in Syria as well, as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the Russian Federation are both involved in this conflict as well. Now, before I start, I must say I'm a bit under the weather, dealing with a case of strep, and hopefully with these antibiotics I will be fully recovered soon. Difficult to speak with a very sore throat, obviously, but I thought it prudent to have a discussion about what is happening right now with the addition of the broadening of the conflict, so to speak, with what is happening in Syria. And yes, Syria is directly part of what is happening right now between Russia, NATO, Ukraine, the United States, the West. Now let's jump over to the secondary map, which will, and I also want to pull this map down towards the Syrian area of operation, specifically looking at western Syria, Latakia, Idlib, Lebanon, and south towards Damascus. And then the secondary map will show you the current offensive operations by al-Nusra, Sunni Islamists that are attempting to take control of Syria and institute a Sunni Islamist state. And that is what is happening. The current Syrian state is a multi-ethnic, multi-religious state. If the Islamist wins, that will no longer be the case. Yes, Bashar al-Assad will depart or be killed, but Syria will change, as will the entire region. Will change with it. Now, al-Nusra has had success. They have captured Aleppo. They have moved south towards Hama. Now, this is where things get conflicted. Obviously, in a conflict, in a war, disinformation against your adversary is your friend. You want to produce disinformation that would lead your adversary to believe, and especially frontline troops, mid-level officers, and the population to believe that you are being defeated. Now, what's interesting is some of the first organizations to claim a coup d'etat was taking place inside of Syria, specifically Damascus, was coming from Ukrainian intelligence. This was being reported by Ukrainian intelligence services, and thus the Ukrainian media. If you pull up any number of websites, Defense Express, first signs of Russian warships fleeing from Tartus naval base in Syria. Syrian rebels capture Aleppo and move on to Hama in rapid attack. Now, some of this information that was being reported, especially early, as of 2 days ago, some of these reports were stating that there was fighting occurring in Damascus between elite elements of the Syrian military. Specifically, what was being reported by some Ukrainian sources and other Western sources was that elements of the 4th Armored Division of the Syrian army was engaged in direct combat with elements of the Syrian Republican Guard in Damascus. Now, none of that can be verified. Now, is it true? Is it probable? Probably not. Probably not. But nonetheless, it was reported. And in some areas, it received traction. The reports of Russians and Russian forces fleeing Syria, who does that benefit? Well, it benefits the other side. It benefits al-Nusra. It benefits these hardcore Islamist organizations that are attempting to take control of Syria. Backed, yep, by, you guessed it, the United States and Turkey. Now, what is happening right now? Are the rebels, the al-Nusra, are they on the verge of sweeping into Damascus? No, they're not. It was easier for al-Nusra and these Islamist organizations to infiltrate into Aleppo and some of these other urbanized areas in and around Aleppo. And they were successful in that endeavor. Now, what has become challenging for al-Nusra and these Islamist organizations was the move south from Idlib and Aleppo towards Hama. If you go over to our main map and you look at the route taken by the Islamists, they, for the most part, are utilizing this M5 highway. And what happens when they break out of these urban areas, this has given both the Syrian military, the Syrian Air Force, and the armed forces of the Russian Federation the ability to attack these convoys heading south along the M5. These are vast open areas in which targets are identified. They can be easily attacked. The Russians, the Syrian military, can declare no movement zones along the M5. And anything moving is going to be considered a hostile target. And thus, what is making it very challenging for al-Nusra is this movement south under direct and constant air bombardment. It's very difficult to fight an enemy that has air superiority. It has the ability to bring to bear ground attack aircraft. Also, what is difficult for al-Nusra and the Islamists is that they have moved outside of the precision attack circle that was created for them by the Turks. We know that the Turks and weapon systems provided from NATO to assist Turkey and al-Nusra were using these precision-guided weapons of war, 227mm ATACMS, HIMARS-like missiles against Syrian targets. Now, once they move south, that ability to use these precision-guided weapon systems have thus been negated. Now, will they be able to move these systems further south if the Islamist offensive continues? Possibly, but that hasn't been done yet. What is happening right now is the Syrian Air Force and the Russian Air Force are effectively engaging these Islamist forces as they move south. At the same time, again, misinformation. Information such as Bashar al-Assad has fled the country. We don't know that. But again, if you are the adversary, that is something you are going to say. You want to create an environment of disinformation where you make your adversary, the opposing force, believe that senior leadership elements are fleeing the country because they're on the verge of a military defeat. But we do not know that. There's also reports stating that Islamists are moving towards the main Russian airbase in Latakia. Now look, this is probably the most important military target or military site, both, in all of Syria. This is where predominantly the Russians deploy its air force, as do the Syrian air force as well. But for the most part, it is operated by the Russian Air Force. And what reports are circulating is that al-Nusra the Islamists are attempting to move into Latakia and threaten that airbase. Now, have they done that? Are the rebels or the Islamist forces 20 miles from the Al-Assad Air Force Base, south of the city of Latakia? Maybe. But you have to understand the terrain changes substantially moving from the lowlands east of the Latakia province. And then as these Islamists move into Latakia, the terrain drastically changes. It becomes mountainous. And this is the proverbial Alawite heartland. It is very well fortified, very well defended, and would be very, very difficult for the al-Nusra Front to make inroads towards that Russian airbase, that joint Russian-Syrian airbase. So at this point, we do not believe that that Russian airbase southeast of Latakia is in any threat of being taken over by al-Nusra Front. We don't believe that is going to happen. We also don't believe that the Islamists are on the verge of rolling into Damascus. If you, again, look at mainstream media, you will see headlines. And those headlines are as follows. Usually, Syrian opposition moves towards Damascus, makes rapid advance towards Damascus. But are they? The information that we have right now is that they have been stopped near Hama. That movement south from Hama right now is very difficult for these Islamist forces. Movement west towards Latakia, very difficult for these Islamist forces. Compounding that, the Russians and the Syrians continue airstrikes along the M5 highway, the supply lines of these Islamist forces. As these Islamist forces continue to move south, they're going to run into better trained, better equipped, more motivated Syrian forces, such as the Republican Guard, the 4th Armored Division, and other specialized groups of the Syrian military. Now, granted, we had believed that there were elements of the Republican Guard in Aleppo, 30th Division. Now, what happened there? Again, we will eventually find out. But again, a lot of what happened in Aleppo specifically and around Aleppo was due in part to the sophisticated weapons that were used against the Syrian military by the Turks, with direct participation, surveillance, intelligence, sensory data by, yep, you guessed it, NATO. Because again, putting pressure on Russia in Syria helps with the ongoing war in the Ukraine. There you have it. Game of Wars. Now, the situation in the Ukraine continues. The Donbass offensive continues. We're going to continue to report on that, but unfortunately, my throat, my voice is very challenged right now. So I'm going to end it here. As always, thanks for joining us. Have a good day.